Well, hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name is Blair Lamb. I live in Texas with my family, which consists of my husband Riley and my daughter Nora, who is 4, and my son Colin, who is 2. We also have a sweet little dog named Charlie Bear, but he does not come with us to Disney World or Disneyland. So today I want to compare and contrast Disney World and Disneyland. A little bit of background on our family, if you're new, is that we have been going to Disney World as often as possible for the past, I don't know, it's been since about 2016 that we've been going really regularly, so about 8 years now. And we just went to Disneyland for the first time a few weeks ago. So that was our first taste of Disneyland. I have been getting so many questions and comments and messages asking about one thing or the other, so I thought I would try to do a comprehensive video talking about the similarities and differences between the two locations. I have 5 pages of typed up notes that I've been working on pretty much since before we even went to Disneyland, because I knew a lot of people were going to be wanting this type of content. I love this type of content, so I understand. Also, as I'm just remembering, I'm wearing my At Last I See the Light sweatshirt, which is from my shop, which is blairlambdesign.com. I have lots of magical designs there, including a whole new line called Princesses in Business, and it's all of our favorite Disney princesses if they were business owners and the types of businesses they would have. And I have several more coming out that are in the pipeline now, and I'm very excited about. So make sure that you go to blairlambdesign.com. I will leave a link below as well as a coupon code for you if you'd like to check it out. So let's jump into all these 5 pages. I will try to be as concise as I can. And before I jump into this, just know that I'm sharing my opinion, and I know that some people really dislike any comparisons between Disney World and Disneyland, but they're both Disney properties with theme parks within the United States. So I think it is fair to compare and contrast them, although I do understand that they are very, very different, and I saw that firsthand when we went to Disneyland. So let's just jump right in. We're going to be covering traveling to the parks, general park comparisons, the weather, transportation within the parks, hotels, food, pricing, the actual theme parks themselves and not just the property, the attractions, the overall experience, and my final thoughts. So let's get going. So traveling to the parks and how you get there is obviously very dependent on where you live, how close or far you are from the parks. Living in Texas, it's pretty much 6 1/2 dozen flying to Florida or flying to California. The travel time and all that is virtually the same, so that's pretty much a wash. However, it was not a wash when it came to airports. So when we fly to Florida, we always fly into the Orlando airport, MCO, and it is like a total nightmare. It's awful. It's just busy, it's inefficient, it's just not my favorite airport, probably my least favorite airport. On the other hand, the airport that we flew into to go to Disneyland is the John Wayne Airport in Orange County, and it is so cute and tiny and small, only 15 miles from Disneyland, and just easy. Like, as easy as it is as much of a mess as Orlando often is, the airport. So anyway, you can also fly when you're going to Disneyland into other airports like LAX, which would be a much bigger experience, but we really, really liked flying into John Wayne. So if you have that option, I definitely recommend looking into it. It is small, simple, streamlined, everything good. So those are kind of the differences between the airports. Let's talk about transportation from the airport to your hotel room or to your hotel. So in Disney World, there used to be Magical Express, which was included with the price of your stay if you were staying at a Disney resort, and they would pick up your luggage and take you to your airport, all included. It's no longer included, and they don't do the luggage piece anymore. However, you can book Mears Connect, which is virtually the same service where you grab your bags, you get onto these buses run by Mears Connect, and they take you directly to your Disney resort. So that's what's going on at Walt Disney World. Of course, you can also hire private transport, you could rent a car, those sorts of things. On the other hand, when I was booking our Disneyland vacation online, I had the option at checkout to add on a shuttle service with a company called Carmel. I did so, but then learned that Carmel does not provide car seats, and we would have to bring our car seats just for that short 15-mile drive to and from the airport, which is a lot in addition to the suitcases and the stroller and everything else. So I decided to cancel that Carmel reservation, and I went ahead and booked with another company that does provide car seats and had excellent reviews, called Anaheim Town Car Services. And it was so easy. I just let them know I needed 2 car seats installed. The car seats were in great condition. They were properly installed, and that made it a lot easier for us as far as transportation. Obviously, you're going to pay a higher price when you have a private SUV picking you up versus when you're getting on like a Mears Connect bus, but the efficiency and ease of not having to travel with 2 bulky car seats was worth it to us. Overall, the ease for us of getting to Disneyland or to Disney World are very similar. I would say that for us, getting to Disneyland was smoother simply because the airport was so much easier and because we did have a private transport that really made things just easy peasy. But we've never had any issues with flying into Orlando other than just disliking the airport because it's just so chaotic there all the time. Moving into general park comparisons. So Walt Disney World is so much bigger than Disneyland. Walt Disney World is about 30,000 acres, which is the equivalent of 40 square miles, whereas Disneyland is only 500 acres. So we are talking about apples and oranges in terms of size. Walt Disney World has 4 theme parks, 2 water parks, dozens of hotels, dozens of different restaurants, dozens of different everything because it's just so big. Disney Springs is the shopping area in Walt Disney World, and it is a very large outdoor mall. Downtown Disney, however, in Disneyland is much smaller. Disneyland, like I said, 500 acres. There are only 2 theme parks, no water parks. There are only 3 Disney hotels, although there are a good number of their neighbor, good neighbor hotels that are often within walking distance to Disneyland. So that's not to say there aren't other options, but as far as Disney properties, there are only 3 hotels in Disneyland that you could book at. Disney World is the size of Manhattan, very big. You're taking transport here, there, and everywhere. In Disneyland, we didn't use one single form of transportation except for getting from the airport to our hotel. We were able to walk every single place that we went. So as you can see, we're talking about a huge, enormous beast and a much smaller, more of a neighborhood park. Disneyland is actually nestled among neighbors and neighborhood. It's really funny because coming from someone who's been to Disney World and it's just its own city, it's just very different, very special and charming in its own right, but has a very different feel from Walt Disney World in terms of size and scope. Moving into our discussion about weather, so you never fully know what you're going to get because we were expecting Southern California to be pretty nice, sunny, and mild, warm, 70 degrees, something like that. And it was very chilly and rainy for virtually our entire stay. Totally fine, we made the best of it, but not exactly what I was expecting for Southern California. Whereas in Florida, you really never know. There are times of the year when it's pretty chilly, there are times of the year when it's very temperate and mild, and there are times of the year when it is miserable. It is so hot, very humid. It might be hurricane season. You might be getting thunderstorms. It's just very dependent. So it's hard to make a full decision just based on weather. I would say overall, most people would agree that Disneyland probably has better weather overall, but also better weather is very subjective and it super depends on where you're from and the type of weather that you personally prefer. Moving on to the transportation within the parks. So as I mentioned earlier, when you're staying in Walt Disney World, you are absolutely going to be on different forms of transportation throughout your stay. So you might be on the monorail, the buses, the boats, you might be on the Skyliner. There's so many different options and you're going to probably use most or all of them throughout your stay. Whereas in Disneyland, you absolutely can walk everywhere. If you're staying in an on-site hotel, you can totally walk everywhere. And then like I said earlier, there are many different partner hotels that are right close by that you could also walk everywhere. There is a monorail. We never ended up using it because the monorail in Disneyland requires that you break down your stroller, and with a 2- and 4-year-old, the stroller is our mobile home while we are in Disney, and it's not convenient because it's so packed out to break it down. So that's one thing we really liked about Disneyland is that we didn't have to break it down, that we could walk around. We would have loved to utilize the monorail, but because of the stroller thing, it just made more sense and it was a lot smoother for us to just go ahead and walk. Moving on to hotels. So as I mentioned, Walt Disney World has many different hotels and they are at varying price points. So there are a cohort of value hotels and then of moderate hotels and then of deluxe hotels. Both the prices and amenities go up as you go up that scale. On the other hand, the Disneyland hotels that are offered, all three, are pretty much in that deluxe range of price and amenities. We stayed when we went at the Disneyland hotel. It was stunning and beautiful. We absolutely loved it, and it was very much a deluxe feel, if I'm talking about in terms of Walt Disney World hotels. Deluxe amenities, deluxe grounds, the pools were amazing. If I had to compare it to a Disney World resort, I would choose the Beach Club. There are so many differences. They are definitely not super comparable, but if I had to choose one resort in Disney World that we've stayed at that was most similar to the Disneyland hotel, I would choose Beach Club. Both are really lovely properties that are within walking distance to two parks, and they both have really great pools and outdoor spaces. So that would kind of be my closest comparison. Love them both a whole lot, and the Disneyland hotel was just truly a wonderful place. We absolutely loved it. So the next category is food. One of my very favorites. I always love a good snack or meal in Disney. So we had a great experience in Disneyland, but I will say that lately our food experiences in Disney World have been superb as well. If you had asked me 3 or 4 years ago, I would say Disneyland is by far superior, but we went to Disney World for a week last January and a week last December, and every single meal and every snack and everything we ordered was absolutely incredible. Every part of everything was awesome. So when we went to Disneyland, we had the exact same experience. Everything was awesome. I feel like Walt Disney World has recently stepped up their game majorly. I think maybe Disneyland has always had maybe a more stepped up food game from what I glean from others. I couldn't say that I thought one was far superior than the other. We had amazing experiences in both. It's fun to try new treats and different snacks and different options being in new parks. So I really enjoyed that aspect of going to Disneyland for the first time. I didn't feel like the food was significantly better than Walt Disney World. I felt like it was awesome, and I also feel like Walt Disney World food is really awesome. So those are my 2 cents on that. I know some people vehemently disagree and they think Disneyland food is far better, but we went for 2 different weeks last year, and all of the food we had, like I said, was just great. So I can't say that I felt like it was much better. The meal that we ate at Blue Bayou, which is in New Orleans Square, it's a sit-down table service restaurant in Disneyland, was amazing. Service, ambiance, food, drinks, everything was 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. The meal that we've had that was most similar to that in terms of everything hitting that 5-star mark would probably be Space 220. Here comes another big truck. Not because they're similar in any way, they're actually supremely different. But when we went to Space 220, we felt like the service, the meal, the drinks, the food, the ambiance, everything was 5 stars. So those are probably the best meals in both places that we had. Okay, moving on to pricing. Pricing is really hard to talk about because it just depends. Are you local? Are you going to be driving into the parks? Are you going to be staying at an offsite hotel, or are you going to be staying on-site deluxe? Are you staying value? Are you, like, what is the vibe? It's so different. The pricing can be so dependent. Previous stays that we've had at Walt Disney World, where we've stayed at deluxe resorts for about the same amount of time as this trip, we felt like the pricing was very, very similar. I would say the only note would be that typically you're going to go to Walt Disney World for longer than you would go to Disneyland, just because Walt Disney World is so much bigger. There's not a lot more I can say about pricing. You really just need to look into it for you and your family based on what you're interested in doing and how long you're interested in staying. For us, we felt like the pricing was pretty similar. So moving on to the actual theme parks, of course, Walt Disney World has 4 of them. Disneyland has 2 of them. We've already established Walt Disney World is much, much, much bigger than Disneyland. There's a certain charm to Disneyland. The castle is so small compared to Cinderella Castle in Magic Kingdom and Disney World, but it is beautiful and so sweet. You can walk upstairs. There's like this Sleeping Beauty walk-through attraction that's really neat. So walking in and seeing Walt's lamp turned on in his apartment, his office up there, like, oh, just gave me chills. It made tears prick behind my eyes. I just loved that aspect of Disneyland. There was a charm and like a historic nostalgia that I've never felt a lot in Disney World that was really, really special. Also because Disneyland is just sort of like a lower key, smaller vibe. There were characters wandering around everywhere. So like, for example, we were in the New Orleans Square area and Tiana walked by, which thrilled my daughter. And then we were walking around in Disney California Adventure, the other park, and right at the front gates was Mickey dressed in this really dapper suit, and he was just greeting people and taking pictures and autographs. That was really cool. So I really loved that aspect of Disneyland that I've not really seen in Disney World. There's always queues and it's more organized as far as meeting and greeting characters. Loved the walkability of Disneyland. Of course, you can walk throughout the parks in Disney World, but when you're park hopping, you're typically going to need to use some transportation, whereas the parks in Disneyland are just across a courtyard from each other. So you can park hop all day, and we did utilize that a lot, which was really cool. Moving on to the attractions. So there are far more attractions, as I'm sure you could imagine, in Walt Disney World versus Disneyland. I will say though, and I have to say this, where there is an attraction that is the same in both Disney World and Disneyland, across the board, it was done better in Disneyland. Across the board. A few examples. So Pirates is a family favorite of ours. The Pirates ride in Disneyland is so good. It is about 2 times longer than the Disney World version. There are 2 drops and they're much bigger. Their stomach actually bottoms out because they're so much bigger in the Disneyland version. There are far more scenes and it's just a more immersive experience. So cool. Really, really loved it. Also, the Small World, It's a Small World in Disneyland was such a better ride. It goes outside for a little bit. Inside there, it's like full of Disney characters. So there's a section where you see Ariel and then Jasmine and Aladdin, and then you see Lilo and Stitch. And that was super fun to kind of find these beloved Disney characters sprinkled all throughout the ride. Hyperspace Mountain in Disneyland was so good. I preferred it so much over Disney World's version, and I've always loved Space Mountain, but Hyperspace Mountain was just like something special. There's a Star Wars overlay currently, and we loved that. The ride vehicle's different, the ride's a little bit different. I just felt like it was an overall smoother and better ride. Even the Enchanted Tiki Room I felt like won out and was better in Disneyland than it was in Disney World. The courtyard area, the Dole Whip stand being all in that little area, and then the nostalgia of the Enchanted Tiki Room, we loved all of it. We have heard that this same pattern is true also for Haunted Mansion, but very sadly Haunted Mansion was closed for refurbishment in Disneyland when we went, so I'm not able to compare. Big bummer. Haunted Mansion is my husband's favorite ride, so he was really upset not to get to try it out in Disneyland, but we will be back and he can try it the next time and I will report back. Overall, I would say with little kids, Disneyland, as far as attractions goes, is just easier. It's more walkable. You can just push your stroller everywhere. There are plenty of kids attractions. Toontown is such a win for toddlers. There's a huge playground, play space area that our kids really, really enjoyed right in the park. And because it's such a small park, you can just pop over there throughout the day for them to get energy out and not feel like they're stuck in the stroller the whole time. I did miss other things though. I really missed Epcot. I love Epcot so much. Love Animal Kingdom, and there's nothing like either of those in Disneyland. I love Pandora. Flight of Passage is a personal favorite ride that obviously doesn't exist in Disneyland. But then in Disneyland, there were other special things like Cars Land was amazing. I loved Cars Land. If you've seen my vlogs, then you already know. I loved it. Radiator Springs Racers in that land was just such a good ride. Absolutely loved it. So overall, it's like, of course, smaller park, smaller area, there's going to be fewer rides, but the rides that were in Disneyland that are also in Disney World, Disneyland across the board did them better. Disney World has more options. I would imagine if I were taking like teenagers on a trip, I would want to go to Disney World just because there's more options, more rides, more big rides. But with little kids, Disneyland is definitely where it's at. Not to mention some of the Disneyland specific rides were incredible. Like I loved Web Slingers. The whole Avengers campus is so incredible. Riley loved Mission Breakout. He thought that was just so cool. So I don't really have anything bad to say about any of the attractions, but just comparing and contrasting them a little bit, I was actually pretty blown away by the way that Disneyland does attractions. Each one was like the special effects were better. The Indiana Jones ride in Disneyland is so, so good. I was blown away. I was thinking, I didn't know what it would be. I was just kind of like, I want to go on it just to say that I did. And then I went on it and I was like, I want to ride that 5 more times. Such a good ride. Disneyland really, they do attractions right. Like, it's really awesome. So as far as overall experience between the two parks, I would always want to spend more time in Walt Disney World. I feel like we could spend 10, 12, 15 days in Disney World and still be doing new things and eating at new places and exploring and all of this. Whereas Disneyland just simply doesn't require that amount of time. We went for 5 days and 4 nights, but on that 5th day we woke up at the crack of dawn, like 3 a.m. to get on a flight. So we really only had 4 days and 3 nights and only spent 3.5 days in the parks. Plenty of time. I would love to go back and do more, but we really got a good feel. We got a lot done. We did lots of attractions, lots of rides. We got to see both parks in full, like really, really got a good grasp. 3.5 days in Disney World, you would not be really scratching the surface. There's so much more. And like, I personally love in Disney World exploring the resorts and the resort areas. There's so much more there to explore. Even Disney Springs could be an entire day on your trip. For us, often it's half of a day. And so length of trip would be a big factor for me moving forward with our family. If we're gonna go for a long weekend, I would love to do Disneyland. It's so smooth, it's so easy. You just go and you just stroll your little stroller around. Whereas Disney World is so much bigger and more immersive. And so I love that for a longer trip. You can really get lost in that Disney bubble, and I absolutely love that. We felt like wait times were very similar between the two properties. We used Genie Plus in Disneyland, and whenever we are in Disney World, we always use Genie Plus, or previously we would use Fast Passes. So for us, that was a wash. We never waited longer than 10 or 15 minutes because we just made sure to use those Genie Pluses. So nothing really to report there as far as wait times go. The accessibility aspect of Disneyland is just, I know I've brought it up multiple times in this video. I don't know how to impart, like, it is so much more accessible. It is just easy to walk around. It's so easy. My feet never hurt once, and we were going all day, every day that we were there. We did do a couple of breaks, so I guess that's not totally true, but lots of walking and still my feet never hurt because it's just not so expansive. Whereas in Disney World, of course, you know, walking through Epcot, there was one day a few years ago when we clocked 19 miles in one day on an Epcot day. It's so different, you know what I mean? Our interactions with cast members on both properties were just amazing. I mean, we've had amazing interactions through the years with cast members in Disney World, and again in Disneyland had the exact same experience. Just helpful, friendly, kind people who went out of their way to make our vacation really, really awesome. There's only one exception to that, which was last December, and I was vlogging on that day when we had a rained out Mickey's Very Merry Christmas party, and I was trying to figure out refund, and a cast member said to me, "This is not my circus and these are not my monkeys." And I thought, well, I don't know, like, you're working at guest services and I'm a guest. I sort of feel like this is exactly your circus and your monkeys. I understand what she was saying was that she couldn't help me, but there was definitely a kinder way to say that. That was the one exception in all the years that we've been doing Disney stuff, Disney cruises and, you know, Disney World and now Disneyland. The only time I've had an unsavory interaction with a cast member was just that once in December. It was just a little bit unhelpful when we have, like, we're all soaking wet, it's pouring down rain, and we're disappointed because we're missing. Anyway, I won't go on, but you know, sometimes you just get people on a bad day and that's okay too. So we had great experiences with cast members at Disneyland, just as we always have at Disney World. So I didn't feel like that was any real difference. So my final thoughts here are, if you are a Walt Disney World family like we are, and that's where you always go, and you've just kind of wondered about Disneyland and it's been in your periphery, book a trip and go. You will fall in love with Disneyland. I am so smitten with Disneyland. It is like the coziest, warmest hug. It's historic, it's nostalgic, it's where it all began. Walking through the streets you know that Walt designed and walked through and loved, like, it's so good. Like, it's just so good. It brings such a feeling of joy and connection, and I just loved that. Not to mention, the restaurants are amazing, the hotels are amazing, the parks are amazing, the cast members are amazing. There's so many great, amazing things to experience. So if you love Disney, you get to kind of expand your Disney palette if you go to Disneyland and just experience all of that. So that is all I will say. We love both places. We will continue to go to both places for many years to come, probably long weekends in Disneyland and longer week-long plus trips in Disney World. Would love to hear your thoughts below. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned, make sure to subscribe. We have got some new Disney content coming up at the end of this year and early next year. We've got a Disney World trip. We've got a Disney cruise for the first time with our kids. So excited to share with you. Thank you for being here. Make sure to watch all of my Disney vlogs if you like that kind of thing. I've got like 80 of them now. So I'll leave that playlist linked below. And I will see you guys super soon. See you in the comments.